With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yulana Weeks.
Our top stories.
Female artists on the 2025 St. Kitts Music Festival lineup discusses breaking gender stereotypes in the music industry.
St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister on bolstering Afro-Caribbean ties at Afrexim Bank 32nd annual meetings. Caribbean Center for Human Rights in fighting to address systemic injustices and empower communities across the Caribbean. Internationally, Europe swelters as heat wave breaks record and becomes new normal. Now, the details.
The music industry has long been shaped by gender stereotypes, with men historically dominating roles such as producers, engineers, and lead performers in the global music industry. Female artists in particular have often faced barriers from a lack of representation in executive positions to being confined to certain genres of music. Some female artists have been called out for their fashion, others have had their talents questioned, and many have had to fight twice as hard as men to get the exposure and recognition they so desire. In St. Kitts and Nevis and other Caribbean islands, as more female artists burst onto the scene, they and other industry professionals are speaking out, challenging the disparities and demanding equality and recognition. At the St. Kitts Music Festival 2025, local artists Virgil Hodge and Ideli Nappy, as well as Trinidad soca sensation Patrice Roberts, discussed what it means to be a female performer and their desires for the future. Ideli Nappy wants to inspire the next generation of young women, beginning with her daughter, to pursue their dreams and passions no matter what.
I'm a mother. I have a daughter, right? So I have a girl child, and one thing that's very important to me is breaking that mold and being able to show her that anything is possible. Whatever she dreams, whatever she wants to do is possible. And not just for my daughter, but any woman out there, that once you put your work in anything you do, whether it be music, art, performing, cooking, whatever your passion is, go out there and get it done. No matter what the field look like, we need you. We need to see more of you.
Despite the challenges in the music field, Virgil Hodge was pleased with the response to her onstage performance. She told the press backstage that she hopes to gain more visibility, both regionally and internationally.
Women on a whole, we have challenges because with this industry, men always lead, but it's not a lot like before. I think women now are trying to step out a little more than before, and we are dominating in a way from the screams and the shows and stuff like that. Really want them to take away that no matter where you are in life, like you can overcome anything. You can overcome anything, and you just follow your dreams, because I am an Olympian, and if you have another talent, just fulfill that. You never know, it might take you. Hopefully tonight will open up some more doors for me on the international stage, and just waiting for that.
A veteran in the music industry, Patrice Roberts has taken control of her sound, image, and business venture, cementing herself as one of the region's most sought-after soca queens. She acknowledged that music is a male-dominated industry, and as a woman in music, it is important to remain focused.
We are in a male-dominated industry, but for me as a woman, once you know what you want and you're surrounded by people who see your vision and your goal, it becomes so much easier, because outside noise seems to kind of block everything that you want to do. But once you, like I say, focus on the goal, then everything else is easier.
Meanwhile, as the music world slowly moves toward a more inclusive and diverse space, the St. Kitts Music Festival is doing its part by challenging old expectations and embracing women's talent and creativity. This transformation not only changes how music is made and shared, but it's also redefining who gets to be heard. In 2025, 8 female acts graced the stage for the St. Kitts Music Festival. They include Jennifer Hudson, Patrice Roberts, Shensia, Spice, Virgil Hodge, Abena Amory, Ideli Nappy, and Ira Starr. Several women also served as backup singers for some of the participating artists.
The 32nd annual meeting of the African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank, recently concluded in Abuja, Nigeria, under the unifying theme Building the Future on Decades of Resilience. The event gathered influential leaders and stakeholders from across Africa and the Caribbean to foster dialogue on trade, investment, and innovation for sustainable development. Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew, delivered a keynote address on the opening day. His address underscored Afrexim Bank's consistent responsiveness to the needs of its people, promoting development inclusion, and opportunity. Dr. Drew emphasized the burgeoning importance of the bank's relationship with CARICOM, advocating for deeper economic and cultural integration between Africa and the Caribbean. St. Kitts and Nevis has already initiated significant investment ventures through its partnership with Africsim Bank, aiming to forge connections that benefit current and future generations. Prime Minister Drew later participated in a panel discussion titled Leveraging a Common Heritage, the African-Caribbean Initiative, highlighting the strategic collaboration between the two regions. During his keynote address, Dr. Drew lauded Africsim Bank's enduring impact, reflecting on its 32-year journey.
Let me extend heartfelt congratulations to Africsim Bank for reaching this milestone. 32 years of courage, resilience, and service to its people. 32 years of choosing vision over fear, action over hesitation, and competition and community over competition. From its founding, this bank has taken on a mission far greater than commerce. It has carried the burden of opportunity, building systems that empower African peoples and economies to chart their own course, to finance their own progress, and to trust their own. Institutions like this one answer their own questions about what is possible. That mission is still unfolding, and it is still as urgent as ever.
He paid special tribute to Professor Benedict Orama, President and Chair of the Board of Directors of Africsim, acknowledging his transformative leadership.
Under your stewardship, Africsim Bank has become more than a financial institution. It has become a living testament to what is possible when leadership is not only competent, but deeply conscious. You have expanded the horizon. You have expanded the horizon of what African leadership and institution building can mean. You have been both strategic and soulful, firm in your technical leadership, but also emotionally intelligent in how you have guided relationships, built trust, and told a new story about what Africa and its diaspora can build together.
Recounting his first meeting with Professor Orama in 2022, Dr. Drew stated,
I speak of this not in abstraction, but from a place of deep personal reflection. When I met Professor Orama for the first time in 2022 in Barbados, just 1 month after taking office as Prime Minister, I was struck not only by his clarity of purpose, but his generosity of spirit. That meeting planted a seed, and I left with the firm conviction that the work of connecting Africa and the Caribbean was not just about speeches and symbolism. It was about systems. It was about finance. It was about reshaping the machinery of cooperation across the Atlantic so that it no longer simply echoed our history, but actively built our future. From that first conversation, it became clear to me that the Africsim Bank, under President Orama's leadership, was not simply welcoming the Caribbean into its orbit, it was embracing us as kin.
He further elaborated on the significance of St. Kitts and Nevis being the first CARICOM nation to sign an MOU with Africsim.
That is why St. Kitts and Nevis was proud to be the very first country in the Caribbean to sign a Memorandum of Understanding through the Africsim Bank. That was not a diplomatic formality. It was a deliberate act of trust. A Prime Minister and a government, we believed in the bank's vision. We believed in his vision. And we took a step not just on behalf of our country, but on behalf of the entire CARICOM region. That step has proven to be one of the most impactful and future-facing decisions we have taken in recent years.
Dr. Drew also highlighted a personal connection.
It is also why, above the desk in my office, hangs a painting, a gift from Professor Orama. And I see it every day. And I do not just see the art. I see a reminder that partnership is built not only on contracts, but on character. that beyond the bureaucracy of intergovernmental relations lies something that is far more powerful. Those things are relationships, trust, shared identity, shared accountability, and shared ambition.
The Prime Minister emphasized that resilience must not be coupled with reinvention.
That is why today, as we gather under the theme, Building the Future on Decades of Resilience, we must remember that resilience alone, though critically important, is not enough. Resilience is what carried us through colonization, through exploitation, through decades of underdevelopment, through decades of being shut out. And listen to the story of what brought the African Bank together, of course, pleads to this. But resilience must now be matched with reinvention, with the courage to reimagine ourselves as architects as we build our countries and economies together. That is where African Bank's true legacy lies, not only in what it has protected and built thus far, but what it dares to build in the future. Today, the Caribbean is no longer a distant observer to Africa's renaissance. We have become an active partner as the sixth region of the African Union. So thanks to the African Bank, we have moved from the margins to the center.
The establishment of African Bank's regional office in Barbados, its first outside Africa, was described as a profound gesture.
The bank's establishment of a regional office in Bridgetown, Barbados, the first and only African Bank office outside of the African continent, was a political and spiritual gesture. It signaled to us that in the Caribbean, that we are no longer the forgotten family members of this great continent, but we are truly the sixth region of the Union.
The Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum, ACTIF series, initiated by African Bank, has become a premier platform for engagement, mobilizing over US $6 billion in opportunities across its editions in Barbados 2022, Guyana 2023, and the Bahamas in 2024. With ACTIF 2025 slated for Grenada, Prime Minister Drew announced that St. Kitts and Nevis would proudly host ACTIF 2026.
But these meetings, these agreements, these events are not the end. They are the beginning of a new era. An era where African and Caribbean businesses co-finance tourism, co-develop climate resilience infrastructure, co-create fintech solutions, and co-author the story of what a truly global Africa looks like.
Reflecting on a recent high-level delegation visit from St. Kitts and Nevis to Abuja, Dr. Drew noted the activation of new project development frameworks and cultural exchange initiatives.
Earlier this year, I led a high-level delegation from St. Kitts and Nevis to this great city, Abuja. It was a productive, affirming, and deeply meaningful journey. During that visit, we had discussions that spanned renewable energy, biotechnology, agriculture, creative economy, and education. Out of that visit came opportunities that are already being activated, including new project development frameworks and cultural exchange initiatives.
He underscored a shift in perception of the Atlantic Ocean.
And just this month, we were honored to receive an African delegation in St. Kitts and Nevis. That visit represented a physical crossing of a once tormented corridor, the Atlantic Ocean, that for centuries symbolized our forced separation. But this time, the journey was not one of sorrow, but one of solidarity. The visit breathed new life into our shared commitment to build a new bridge that I call the Atlantic Bridge, one made not of wood and steel, but of people, of partnership, and of purpose. We are now reimagining the Middle Passage, not as a scar, but as a route, not as a memory of bondage, but as a pathway of boldness. The waters that once carried our ancestors away in change, in chains now carry our children's dream, our nation's ambitions, and our sheer determination to reunite across the Atlantic in pursuit of sovereignty, prosperity, and dignity.
Prime Minister Drew affirmed his commitment to interlinking Africa and the Caribbean.
As Prime Minister, I've made it the core foreign policy priority to see Africa and the Caribbean not as two regions with occasional overlaps, but as one extended family with an economic, diplomatic, and developmental destiny that is interlinked. Under my upcoming chairmanship of CARICOM in January of 2026, I intend to lead missions of regional heads of governments back to the African continent. This will not be a courtesy call. It will be a declaration of intent, a commitment to further embed the Caribbean into the architecture of global Africa.
Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis at the 32nd annual meeting of the African Export-Import Bank. In regional news, Caribbean Center for Human Rights in fighting to address systemic injustices and empower communities across the Caribbean. Triple T Live Online reports.
Are we truly free? And if not, why?
The Caribbean Center for Human Rights strives to address systemic injustices and empower communities across the Caribbean, one of which is the Savings Law Clause embedded in the constitution of several Caribbean countries. A savings law clause is a provision that preserves existing laws from being overturned by new constitutional provisions, particularly those related to fundamental rights. Breaking the Chains, the Fight for Justice Beyond Colonial Laws is the title of the CCHR's book, which specifically addresses the clause and its implications.
The book is meant to speak to the entire Anglophone Commonwealth Caribbean because they all experience a similar journey, even though we may see different phenomena in Jamaica because they have actually adjusted their constitution, their savings law clause, but it still has a savings law clause. Belize is the only constitution that actually had a time stamp. Their savings law clause only operated for 5 years and then it no longer functioned. But for the rest of the Caribbean, Trinidad is pretty much equally behind the other countries.
Co-author, attorney at law and director at CCHR, Ria Mohammed Davidson, noted that even though the area of law covered in the book is complex, it was written with everyone in mind.
What we tried to do and expended great effort at doing is making sure that the material is presented in a way that is accessible, because that is something else that is a big part of our vision at the Caribbean Center for Human Rights. Making law and making human rights accessible to persons. Because when you know your rights, you will see that people treat you quite differently. And when we create a conversation about human rights, everyone is going to benefit from that. So even though this is a book about law, it's not a book for only lawyers. Anyone can pick it up and read it, and it's digestible information in the way that it's presented.
Chairman of the CCHR, Dr. Carolyn Gomes, gave several examples of laws that are still on the books that seem irrelevant now. She said what needs to be addressed is the thinking behind preserving these savings laws.
Peddling. You want to open up the back of your car because you're a vegetable person, you have a lot of vegetables to sell. You better have a license. And you have to go and pay somebody. So we don't know that they're saved until we end up in jail and try and challenge it. And that's one thing we need to have those conversations as people. Is this what we want to impose? Do we want to keep the right of somebody to flog you with a cat o' nine tails? Is that right?
Though the book does not specifically answer the question on what to do about these clauses, Dr. Afonso said it does give options to regional governments on the way forward.
The problem is that some 65 years after we've become independent, those laws are still on our books, even though the British have abolished the laws themselves. And we, in our identification of who we are, seem to think that those laws reflect who we are, and that's an issue that we have now, and this is when I think colonization has really become a successful concept, that the colonized actually begin to feel that what has been imposed on them is a reflection of who they are as a people, and that is not true.
Breaking the Chains is now available, and copies can be requested through the Caribbean Center for Human Rights website. Ayana Carter, TTT News.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines proudly hosted the opening ceremony of the 77th meeting of the OECS Authority. The OECS free circulation of goods and the road to deeper integration, both priorities at the 7th OECS Assembly sitting. OECS geothermal projects raise profile at the Nevis Geothermal Forum. I am Claudia McDowell. On June 17, 2025, St. Vincent and the Grenadines proudly hosted the opening ceremony of the 77th meeting of the OECS Authority. The following day, June 18th, heads of government convened for a high-level caucus to deliberate on pressing regional matters. The meeting focused on the trade and economic impacts of the America First policies in the OECS, an update on the Food and Agriculture Systems Transformation Strategy, a vision paper called Beyond Farm Workers for the Eastern Caribbean Liaison Service, OECS Digital Learning Ecosystem, and the latest developments at the Centers of Excellence in Healthcare. OECS heads of government focused on accelerating decisions for each of the activities following an urge from the Director General, Dr. Didicus Jules, to prioritize strategic integration in an unstable environment.
We must streamline our internal operations to prioritize outcomes over procedures. Bureaucracy must give way to purposeful delivery. Integration must start within by dismantling departmental and conceptual silos and replacing them with a culture of systemic collaboration and coherence. The OECS Commission must position itself as a model of speed, clarity, and strategic alignment.
Find the communique of the 77th meeting of the OECS Authority at www.oecs.int in the press room. The Authority meeting coincided with the 7th sitting of the OECS Assembly, held under the theme Strengthening Regional Unity in a Shifting Global Order, also in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The OECS Assembly is a regional parliament consisting of parliamentarians from all member states, both government and opposition. At the 7th sitting, the OECS free circulation of goods bills were debated. They include the OECS Animal Health Bill, Plant Protection Bill, Food Safety Bill, Standards Bill, and Customs Control and Management Bill. These bills represent a major step forward towards operationalizing the OECS Customs Union. Several members of the Assembly called for more attention to matters of collaboration and integration for the sake of resilience in trade and for the benefit of OECS economies. The members unanimously agreed that the bills should be presented to the OECS Authority with recommendations and adjustments along with the OECS Contingent Rights Bill. Once approved, they will be submitted to the Protocol member states for consideration within their national legislative frameworks. Island Innovation, in collaboration with the Nevis administration and the OECS GeoBuild program, presented the Nevis Geothermal Forum. Government leaders, technical experts, international partners, and private sector stakeholders convened on May 26 to accelerate the region's geothermal development. The forum featured a showcase of the OECS's geothermal progress, including Nevis's plans to build a 30-megawatt power plant. Dominica, Grenada, and St. Lucia also shared updates on their geothermal plans at the commissioning, bidding, and tendering stages, respectively. The Nevis Geothermal Forum provided the OECS Commission with an opportunity to reaffirm its commitment to supporting member states through technical assistance, policy guidance, and investor coordination. The Commission also plays a key role in international partnerships with New Zealand, Iceland, and Britain to secure the resources needed to realize the region's geothermal potential. In another update, the OECS GeoBuild program headed to Guadeloupe this week for a study tour for sustainable energy solutions. Stay tuned to our newsroom for that upcoming report.
We now bring you these international reports.
Another summer, another heat record broken in Europe. Temperatures surpassed June records in Spain on Saturday, hitting 46 degrees Celsius in the southwest. In neighbouring Portugal, Residents and tourists in Lisbon sweltered under 40 degrees on Monday. And countries across Europe are expecting record temperatures in the coming days. In France, an unprecedented 84 out of 96 mainland regions have been placed on the orange heat alert, the second highest. Tourists queuing at the Eiffel Tower were sprayed with water as they waited to go up the famous tourist attraction.
We have to split early activities and the evening activities because in the middle of the day we have an elder person and we have to look for a place to settle down and drink some water because it's hard to stay outside in the middle of the day.
In London, temperatures rose 10 degrees above average for this time of year, making the hottest opening day on record at the Wimbledon tennis tournament. Players are being allowed additional breaks. In the stands, fans must sit and bear the heat.
Yeah, well, I'm struggling because I'm from Inverness, so it never gets this warm up north. So it's about 20 degrees warmer than I'm used to, and I'm sunburnt all over.
SPF 50. It's a hot day, you're going to need it.
The extreme temperatures across Europe are the result of a high-pressure zone over the continent, known as a heat dome. The World Health Organization says these events are becoming more frequent and dangerous because of climate change. And scientists are warning Europeans that scorching heat during the summer months is becoming the new normal. Ferdy Akar, Al Jazeera.
Gaza is facing what doctors are calling a silent catastrophe. A complete collapse in infant nutrition. Formula milk supply is unobtainable. Pharmacies are empty, and the few trucks that do enter Gaza carry none. With the starvation spreading, many women are eating only once a day, and sometimes not at all, leaving them physically unable to breastfeed their newborns.
She's crying now because she wants milk, but I can't breastfeed her. I can barely feed myself. There's no formula anywhere, and when it rarely appears, it's too expensive. I'm exhausted, truly exhausted.
In Nasser Hospital, in the southern city of Khan Yunis, the health of more than 580 premature and medically fragile infants is at risk. The last tens of medical-grade formula are gone.
I've been in Gaza for 4 weeks. In the hospital I've been working at, I've never seen any formula milk at all. No cow's milk even for the older children, no meat, no protein. So there is definitely a lack of formula milk in Gaza.
Scores of children have already died from malnutrition, but doctors warn the real crisis is still ahead. With formula milk banned from entering Gaza by Israeli authorities, families are left with no safe way to nourish their babies. In Gaza, mothers are doing everything to keep their babies alive, but their bodies are shutting down from hunger. With no food, no formula, and no safe alternative, they are watching their newborns suffering in their arms. Tariq Abazoun, Al Jazeera, Deir al-Balah, Palestine.
The U.S. Senate kicked off its so-called vote-a-rama session on Monday as Republicans worked to pass President Donald Trump's sweeping tax cut and spending bill. They were set for a marathon amendment session in which the minority Democrats are allowed to offer an unlimited number of votes. This is part of the arcane process Republicans are using to bypass traditional Senate rules that normally require 60 of the chamber's 100 members to agree on legislation. Here's Republican Senate Majority Leader John Thune.
So, Mr. President, it's time to vote, and Democrats will get a chance. They'll offer all their amendments, and they'll attack this thing as cutting taxes for billionaires. What we are doing here is extending tax relief for the American people, keeping their rates low, making sure they don't have their child tax credit cut in half, their standard deduction cut in half, including new provisions that provide more relief for working Americans, which is what President Trump campaigned on.
The tax cut bill has highlighted divisions within the Republican Party over its expected $3.3 trillion hit to the nation's deficit over the next decade. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office said on Sunday the bill would add about $800 billion more to the nation's $36.2 trillion debt than the version passed last month in the House of Representatives. Many Republicans dispute that claim, contending that extending existing policy will not add to the debt. Democrats, meanwhile, hope the latest eye-widening figure could stoke enough anxiety among fiscally minded conservatives to get them to buck their party, which controls both chambers of Congress. Here's Democratic Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Today, Senate Republicans have to decide: choose the American people or bow down to Donald Trump and his coterie of billionaires. Because this bill, as we have said for months, steals people's health care, jacks up their electricity bill, takes away their jobs, all to pay for tax breaks for billionaires.
The Senate narrowly advanced the tax cut immigration, border, and military spending bill in a procedural vote late on Saturday, voting 51-49 to open debate on the 940-page mega bill. Trump wants the bill passed before the July 4th Independence Day holiday.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were:
Female artists on the 2025 St. Kitts Music Festival lineup discusses breaking gender stereotypes in the music industry.
St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister on bolstering Afro-Caribbean ties at AfricSim Bank 32nd annual meetings. Caribbean Center for Human Rights in fighting to address systemic injustices and empower communities across the Caribbean. Internationally, Europe swelters as heat wave breaks record and becomes new normal. Thank you for listening.